So traditionally, you'll see a lot of people end up doing face pulls. So a lot of people will tell you that the reason you hurt your shoulder is the posterior muscles, again, are weak. Now, we don't really have measurements to know like what's strong and what's weak for most people. So a face pull, for example, is people grab a cable or a band and they'll pull in like this. Now, inherently, that's not a bad exercise if you want to strengthen the posterior muscles, but there's probably more efficient ways of doing it. Also understanding that, again, how do we know strength was the issue? Well, how do we know it's not an issue with the coordination of the kinetic chain, and how do we make this more efficient? So again, we're going to grab our mobility balls, and so we're going to do a very different version of a face pull. So we're going to go back to that bow stance. I'm going to go a little bit wider, or longer, I should say, not wider, in the stance so I can shift a little bit more so I get more of my hips into the movement. So what I'm going to do is start with my arms soft. So you see I'm not creating a lot of tension here. What I'm going to do is my weight's going to be forward. I'm going to pull my weight back and I'm going to pull the balls into my body. I'm going to not lean through my low back. I'm going to try to open through the hips. So I'm pulling and shifting weight, and then I'm going to circle my arms around, forward, pull in, and around. Now you're going to use a little breath. In, exhale. In, and exhale. So spiraling motions like this in the shoulder also take the shoulder through more ranges of motion. A lot of times when people do just external rotation exercises, it's not really the ranges of motion or the directions that the shoulders typically move, especially when we're talking about in relationship to the hips and the core. So drills like this allow us to train a lot more qualities at once: stability, mobility, and the ability to transfer weight through the entire kinetic chain. We do so with integrating breath, which also helps with core stability, as well as reducing things like pain sensations and improving the efficiency of our movement. Because a lot of people usually get injured because something breaks down their movement efficiency. So these things you can do for higher repetitions, and that's why the balls aren't super heavy, because again, we don't want you creating excessive tension in a lot of these drills. These are meant to be fluid. And you'll find that it's hard for a lot of people to be fluid. And that's a sign that they're trying to muscle everything, and that could be a big reason that they're experiencing consistent shoulder issues. So one of the great things about using these strategies that we have in our MIM system is trying to integrate a lot of these traditional patterns into new ways. So we know lifts and chops are very beneficial both for the hips, the core, and the shoulders, but we can sort of integrate them a little bit more fluidly in a variety of ways. Plus we have options in doing more circular and spiraling patterns that are going to be very beneficial as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume what's called a horse stance. So a horse stance comes from the idea that you'd be wider like you're riding a horse, and there's a couple different ways you can do this. So one, we can just put our feet together, we turn our heels out once, turn our toes out 2, heels out 3, 4, and 5. So if you're pretty proficient and you're pretty strong, you can go into a stance like this. Or if you're not, you can just start higher up, or you can move your feet in if it's too uncomfortable. But we are going to allow the feet to be slightly pointed out, and when I go down the position, it's not going to be like a squat. I don't want to sit down, I don't want to sit back, I'm going to sit down. So I'm going to push my knees out and try to go down into a comfortable stance. The balls are going to start in by my hips with my palms up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a big inhale, and then I'm going to shift and rotate through my hips to extend my arm. I'm going to breathe in, pulling my hip back, driving through my opposite foot as I exhale, rotate, and shift to the hip. So I'm getting both work through the core, the hip, the foot, the ankle, and the shoulder in a foundational way to build up these principles. And again, coring this with some breath work to again soften my body and build up some resilience. So this will become a strength challenge for some people because I am learning how to integrate my body, create force, learning how the shoulders are a byproduct of the foot, the hip, and the core, not just working by themselves. So you can do this for time, you can do this for a minute or 2 minutes, but you can start as low as 30 seconds, or you can do this for repetitions. This is a great way to start working with people also who have shoulder issues and teaching them how to correctly utilize your shoulder and restore function through the entire kinetic chain. So over time we get more and more dynamic with a lot of these drills, but you have to own those foundations. So we're going to use both circular patterns in both our shoulders and our hips, as well as diagonal patterns in the next drill. So what we're going to do is we're going to step in what's called a bow stance. So imagine you're in a split stance, but now instead of the foot being heel elevated, the foot is flat but slightly turned out about 45 degrees. Now this can be made more narrow if people lack hip mobility. That's totally fine. We're going to start in this position so our feet are about hip width apart. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start actually learning to shift weight. So I'm going to shift weight back to this leg first. I'm going to cup both hands. Imagine that there's something, a barrier in between that's sort of supporting and connecting both these balls. I'm going to be soft in my elbows, soft in my shoulders. I'm going to take a deep breath in, and then I'm going to shift weight. And as I shift weight, I'm going to start to part the hands, push through the back foot, and allow this arm to push down as this arm looks like it's serving a tray, like I'm serving the ball up. Then I'm going to go ahead and shift weight back, circle both arms around as I breathe in, and then push through the back leg, shift my weight to the front leg as I exhale. Inhale. And exhale. So now these exercises can be also in that in-between area where I'm building mobility, stability, and actually strength too. So if you have clients that struggle with a lot of times with the lunges or split squats and things like that, starting them in drills like this can build up a lot of the mobility, the stability, and the strength that allows them to progress those movements more efficiently. Plus, I'm learning important qualities of how to shift my weight. I'm learning how to utilize my hips. I'm learning how to stabilize my core. I'm learning how to integrate the shoulders in the entire motion. Some of you that are familiar with things like Tai Chi, this looks like a very famous Tai Chi movement. It's very much based upon that, but in a way that our clients can access very easily. So again, we can break this down to many components, but it sort of shows how we start to bridge up into higher levels of training where mobility, stability, and strength start all working together. So we can take any traditional exercise in the gym and give it a good spin with these mobility balls for enhancing different qualities. So for one, if we take our lateral squat, for example, we're going to do certain things to enhance the mobility of our lower body, but also to challenge the movement, to stabilize, and also to integrate some work of the shoulders. So if I start out nice and wide, both feet are going to be active. I'm going to start the balls in by my hips. So when I go ahead and sink down, I'm using both feet, but I'm going to keep my palms up. And this is going to help me gain some more proximal stability. It's going to help me get lower into the movement. Once I hit my end range, then I'm going to press through both legs, but I'm going to start to rotate my hands up, around, and finish back in the position. So it'd be breath in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. So now I'm learning how to also coordinate a little bit more reflexive stability. I'm not creating tension and tightness all the time, but I'm also integrating the shoulders again with the core and the hips. A theme that we use all the time because all the body should move in unison. That's sort of foundational functional training. And that's what allows us to create so much better results than trying to isolate individual muscles. Plus, I'm able to take my arm through different ranges of motion that stabilize different stabilizers throughout the shoulder girdle. So again, I'm getting core stability, hip mobility, I'm getting some lower body strength. I'm also getting work in the shoulder. So again, you start using these again. It depends on the individual. This could be a strength exercise for one person or a great mobility exercise for another.